Luke and Vader's relationship is the epicenter of the original Star Wars story, and except for Vader pursuing Luke on the attack run on the Death Star, their Saber Duel on Cloud City was their first interaction, and the layers of meaning in this duel go far beyond the consequences of Luke's hero arc, with the outcome also marking the beginning of Vader's arc from a stereotypical villain to the more nuanced character we come to know and his redemption. And to explore these layers in this video, I will use a data visualization of Luke and Vader's first duel to explain what it means for the development of each of their characters, their relationship, and why beyond Vader's reveal he was Luke's father, why it was one of the most consequential sequences in the Star Wars saga. And before we get into the visualization, can I please ask that you like this video and subscribe so we can get this data to as big an audience as possible. So let's get started. In this visualization, I've used a radial bar chart to represent the passage of time going around the circle, from the start at the top in a clockwise direction to the end, and each bar represents a move where one character takes the initiative and fights the other. If a character has a sequence of moves, the bars get higher, representing the momentum they gain in the duel, and if the other character initiates a move, the momentum is lost and restarts. And in this duel, Luke is represented with blue and Vader with Sith red. And before we deconstruct the moves in the duel and what they mean for the story, we need to first start with each character's mindset as they faced each other at Cloud City. Starting with Luke, he enters the duel with his mind in conflict, and for the first time since he met Obi-Wan and joined the rebellion, alone. Although he started to feel his connection with the Force in his training with Yoda, as Obi-Wan said, he can't yet control it. His failure to believe in the power of the Force to move his X-Wing and failure in the cave when he sees himself as Vader represents his fear of what he will face. And his decision to leave his training midway to save Han and Leia from their fate in his future visions shows impatience. And it's this fear and impatience that are more characteristic of a Sith than a Jedi. Succumbing to his passions and fear of loss of his friends, rather than gaining strength from knowledge and seeing the bigger picture as a Jedi. And in taking this path, he is walking into a trap where Vader has chosen the ground they fight on, the stage in which Luke is a mere pawn on the chessboard, ready to be frozen in carbonite as a prize for his master. And what of Vader? What was his mindset as he prepared to face Luke? His reaction when he became aware Luke was his son was telling. That when Palpatine said Luke could destroy them, Vader immediately suggested they turn him to the dark side. Now, it could be argued this suggestion to turn Luke was a father trying to protect his son from death, but for me the suggestion was too quick from Vader. This was a Sith suggesting how best to use an asset to the benefit of the Empire and his master. And it's with these mindsets, one of a young Force user full of fear and impatience, and another seasoned dark side Sith Lord intent on corrupting and capturing an asset, that brings us to their first in-person meeting on Cloud City. With Vader's words, "The Force is with you, young Skywalker, but you are not a Jedi yet." Here Vader calls out Luke's inexperience, and I wonder if there is some anger in his voice when he realizes Luke is holding his lightsaber when he himself was a Jedi. If the anger was there, he doesn't show it as he lets Luke land the first blow, though he near effortlessly defends it and then takes a more gentle swipe with his saber rather than trying to land a blow himself. It's as though he wants to show Luke he's in a fight, when the reality is he just wants to guide him to the carbonite chamber. And that Vader decides to only use one hand when holding his saber shows the lack of seriousness he's taking in the duel with Luke. And this is perhaps for good reason. Each attack from Luke in these opening exchanges is of little danger to Vader, as he single-handedly blocks each one and effortlessly pushes Luke away. We then see Vader backing away from Luke, letting him think he is dictating the flow, when of course Vader is intending to draw him towards the carbonite chamber. And Luke does start to gain some momentum in the duel. Then shortly after, he and Vader attempt attacks that counter each other. And I think from this point we start to see Vader's impatience show, as he attempts a first blow of any real strength at Luke, yet Luke starts to use his greater agility and ducks below Vader, leading to him slashing at the pipe to his right. And although Vader misses, this attempted blow and first signs of anger clearly troubled Luke. It's here we see his first genuine look of fear and a moment of realization. A realization he should have listened to Obi-Wan, a realization that he should have completed his training with Yoda on Dagobah, and a realization he is in a fight for his life that he likely cannot win. And just after this moment, we have the first verbal exchange between father and son, with Vader saying, "You have learned much, young one," and Luke retorting that, "You'll find I'm full of surprises." Yet it's Luke who is surprised after Vader effortlessly twirls his saber from his grasp, leaving him with no other option than to roll away down the stairs below them. It's at this point that Luke is vulnerable without his saber, and vulnerable without a control of the Force as his ally. And this is where Vader forces Luke into the chamber, then questioning if he is as powerful as Palpatine thought. But before he realizes what's happening, Luke has used his connection with the Force to jump out of the chamber to safety, hanging onto the pipes in the ceiling. This leads Vader to verbally reappraise Luke's with the words, "Impressive, most impressive." But his tone is near belittling Luke. It's as though he is a master scoring a training session. But this arrogance and verbal taunting from Vader leads to his first mistake in the duel, as Luke flips down, uses the damaged pipe with we presume carbonite spilling from it to attack Vader before calling his saber with the Force and re-engaging with the duel. It's in this moment that Vader likely realises he actually is in a duel, that his opponent does have a connection to the Force that will require him to take him more seriously. Yet it also reveals more about Vader's character than we initially thought. And it's in the lead up to this moment that shows Vader's weakness. If we rewind it back, we see a look from Luke in another direction. It's brief, but it's there. He's looking for his saber, and from this point he's working out what to do next. Now it's clear Luke was surprised to fall in the chamber, but after he recovered, Vader still paid him little mind, giving Luke the advantage to plan an attack and recover his saber. And this is the weakness in Vader, that he focuses on what is in front of him, on victory, and it shows he has learnt very little since Obi-Wan defeated him on Mustafar, where it was Obi-Wan who multiple times surveyed the ground around him to gain an advantage, while Vader in his form as Anakin only focused on destroying Obi-Wan. And in fairness to Vader, this type of singular focus is not unique to him, but more a weakness of the dark side, as we saw a similar situation when Obi-Wan dueled Maul in The Phantom Menace, when at his most vulnerable it was Obi-Wan who looked for Qui-Gon's saber and startled Maul with his flip to secure victory. And back to Vader and Luke, it's clear that Vader is now taking Luke more seriously. He nearly commends Luke on recovering his saber, telling him he has controlled his fear, though now he takes a new strategy to secure his Emperor's prize, by goading Luke into hatred, telling him it is the only thing that can destroy him. But Luke doesn't take the bait, and instead takes the fight to Vader, trying to outmaneuver him with a flip and attack from behind, which takes Vader by surprise and leads to the second time Luke gains any momentum in the duel, with 11 unanswered blows finally toppling Vader as he falls off the platform. At this point, Luke can be forgiven for thinking he can defeat Vader. He has indeed controlled his fear, yet hasn't succumbed to hate. Instead, he's used his knowledge of Vader's weaknesses, in this case his lack of mobility, to outmaneuver him and then take the fight to his enemy. After searching for Vader, he duly finds him, and here we see Vader certainly now taking the duel more seriously, as now he is holding his saber with both hands. This is in sharp contrast to the opening exchanges, where he near nonchalantly blocks Luke's attacks with one hand, near leaning back and clearly unconcerned for his well-being. Whereas now we see Vader holding his saber with both hands, and his shoulders arched forward in an attack-minded stance. Yet Vader also knows he cannot kill Luke, as this would risk his plan to use him as an asset for the Empire. He has to somehow incapacitate him to get him back in the carbonite chamber. And this, of course, is when Vader uses the Force to throw objects at Luke, likely in an attempt to knock him unconscious. And as the objects hit Luke, we see again his weakness and lack of connection with the Force, as he aimlessly swipes his saber at them rather than blocking them himself with the Force, as a fully trained Jedi likely would have done. After these exchanges with Vader, throwing a combination of objects and saber blows against Luke, it is he who is back in the ascendancy, as Luke is sucked out of the window and barely escapes a fall to his possible death by grabbing onto a railing before climbing to safety. It's from this point that Vader has clearly run out of patience, attacking Luke by surprise in a corridor with a series of blows that are now faster paced. Again double-handed with more power than before, likely fueled by anger that this boy has become so irritating and resistant to his power. And as for Luke, he is defending Vader's blows, but he's clearly again overcome by fear, as he backs away from his more powerful opponent, towering over him and raining down blows as he defends for his very life. And this fear is no better exemplified when at the end of the corridor, Luke quite literally runs for his life, turning his back on Vader, completely defenseless, with only his survival in his mind. And although Luke manages to recover his defensive stance and block Vader's next blow, he is now being forced back to the end of another platform, before being pushed to the floor by Vader's brute strength, with his opponent claiming victory, telling him that he is beaten and it is useless to resist. Yet after Vader tells Luke not to be destroyed as Obi-Wan was, a defiance grows in him. Vader killed his mentor, he will kill his friends, and he has to summon the courage to defeat him, and despite his vulnerable position, this inner courage he summons leads to him swiping Vader's saber away and gives him time to get back to his feet. From this point, Vader and Luke again trade blows, more equals now, toe to toe, until the unthinkable happens when Luke lands a blow on Vader. Vader's scream when the saber hits him is also interesting. If it was any of his limbs, he wouldn't have felt a thing, though the blow on his shoulder wounded Vader's human body and led to him in turn losing himself to anger and cutting off Luke's hand along with his saber. At this point, the duel is over. Vader is victorious and Luke is defeated. And here comes not only Vader's revelation he is Luke's father, but I think a lot more than this. Why at this point did Vader tell Luke the truth? Was it through selfishness to get him to succumb to the dark side and to supplant Palpatine when he offered Luke the chance to rule the galaxy as father and son? Or was it more than this, that as the duel progressed he came to better respect Luke, to see in him his old self as Anakin? His earlier words to Palpatine now take on a different meaning. When he suggested to turn Luke to the dark side, was he thinking all along to turn him and overthrow Palpatine, thinking of the rule of two? Or was he genuinely now feeling a connection with his son, the likely only connection he has ever felt since the death of Padme? Here I think both things can be true, that as a Sith he wanted power, but as a man he wanted a connection with his only son and a connection to the woman he still loved to this day. And yet despite this offer, Luke shows his own father's defiance, looking him in the eye as he falls to we think his death, with Vader's open hand lowering as he looks down to see his son fall away from him. And although we can't see behind the mask, we see everything we need to see. Disappointment at his missed opportunity to rule with the son until recently he never knew he even had. And after this moment it feels like Vader wants more from Luke than him merely being his route to power, as he calls to him from his Star Destroyer, calling him son and begging with him to come with him. And all the while Luke is in turmoil at what he sees as a betrayal from Obi-Wan not telling him Vader was his father. And when Luke escapes on the Falcon into hyperspace, we also see a surprising moment from Vader. Having killed a commander before for losing the Falcon, he chooses not to kill Pied. And I think this is because he believed Luke's escape was the will of the Force, and that he would be reunited with his son again. Which of course not only came to pass, but in the process also came Vader's own redemption back to the light. And back to our visualization, we see not only a battle between father and son, but the evolution of their characters. With one a young Force user overcome with fear and impatience, evolving to a physically and emotionally scarred son of a father who now realizes he needs to take the longer, harder path to become the Jedi he needs to be. And a Sith Force user full of hatred, anger and ambition, now accepting that his fate and the fate of his son would be the will of the Force, and his destiny was not yet final. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and please check out my other Star Wars analysis videos. Thanks again for watching, and remember, in the way of data and observation we can save Star Wars and entertainment.